Hi, I'm Vince. Welcome to my Vince Unlimited YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me here, particularly if you're a returning viewer or a subscriber to my channel. In this video, I should be telling you all about my early 2000s HiFi setup, my first true 5.1 surround sound system using high-end components, some of which you may never have encountered before. This is the fourth video in my series telling you all about my AV and HiFi journey, showing the equipment I chose and upgraded, how it developed as technology advanced, what I paid for it at the time with handy equivalent prices today, and the impression it all made on me. If you want to watch the full story from the beginning, which traces its roots all the way back to the 1960s, then links can be found in the description below. The first video in this series, our early 1980s Pioneer HiFi, shown here, covered the earliest decade of my musical journey, to the point my wife Linda and I purchased a top-of-the-range Pioneer stack system in the 1980s and coupled it with a portable colour TV to create a smart-looking audio-visual setup, although the visual and sound systems were mismatched and not interoperable. It was very effective at creating a good sound from its cassette deck, tuner and record deck sources through a 130 watt amplifier powering some quite remarkable big cabinet floor standard speakers. The system included a direct drive turntable, a Dolby Beat cassette deck, a 7-band stereographic equaliser and 300mm diameter bass drivers in the three-way speakers, delivering a thumping bass down to a rumbling 35 Hz. The second video, our mid-1980s AV HiFi system shown here, featured our attempt at creating a rudimentary surround sound setup using a curated Denon-based AV system consisting of a Dolby C cassette deck, matching tuner and a 2x twin 400 watt amplifier. We mated this with a flat screen style 22-inch CRT TV. In addition to the Denon stuff, we included the latest, at the time, technology in the form of a Philips CD player alongside a high-end HiFi VHS video cassette recorder and a HiFi grade turntable. We ditched a graphic equaliser but kept our impressive Pioneer speakers. The twin stereo amp allowed us to properly listen to our portable TV remotely in our bedroom using a pair of new Mission bookshelf speakers, although when we moved house the speakers were put back in our lounge, creating an effective but limited all-round 4-channel sound system. For the 90s we upgraded again, and the third video in the series covers this period, our 1990 surround sound, as shown here. We had noticed that TVs were growing in size and that true digital surround sound amplifiers were available. So we set about updating our system once more to improve our growing fondness of watching home cinema with better visuals and sound. We essentially renewed most of our system and added the latest technology, including a massive Sony 16:9 format widescreen CRT TV, fed from a Pioneer Laserdisc player with external DAC and optical output, which also served as our CD player. Plus we upgraded our video cassette recorder to a top-end Panasonic sVHS, chosen to be compatible with my then new Sony Hi8 camcorder. The second reason for the upgrade that we wanted a true AC3 surround unit, so plumped for a 390 watt Denon receiver with greater connectivity, which gave us remote control and sound modes, teaching us along the way that unmolested sound is best for stereo music reproduction, and you have to be selective when watching AV presentations to avoid unnatural effects. We also learned that Dolby 3.1 processing gave a mono rear output, and that the physical space one creates to enjoy a system is a major limitation. We also finally ditched our beloved Pioneers for KEF reference front speakers and a moderate KEF centre speaker, balanced precariously atop the TV, teaching us all about decalcing. We also started exploring alternative interconnects and the joys and expense of upgrading these. We did reuse some items, our Mission rear speakers, our Denon cassette deck and tuner, and the quality Michel record deck, as these were all still current, albeit aging technology. Finally, as digital set-top boxes came into the market in the late 1990s, we added a Philips on-digital player. All in all, this gave us a great modern sound and looking system that would last a decade, which is where I take up the story of our 2000s true 5.1 surround system using high-quality equipment. In this particular video, which will be illustrated with photographs of my actual setup, I will run through what I changed and how newer technologies guided its creation. Then, after showing the equipment I had curated, I'll demonstrate all the prices I paid at the time and additionally show the equivalent value at current market rates, just as I did with the 3 previous videos in this series. By the 2000s, my earning ability had increased exponentially, so when we decided to upgrade our system, we were able to look at quite high-end hi-fi and even add in something special. We used to frequent hi-fi specialist stores and hi-fi shows and knew what we wanted to go for. In particular, we were rather taken with the looks and sounds of chord electronics amplification. We had witnessed a demonstration at the Bristol Hi-Fi show after our ears picked up the system from all the way at the end of a corridor, despite many other sounding systems playing in each of the adjacent rooms. It consisted of a chord amplification coupled with Bowers & Wilkins speakers and sounded sublime. It retained the warm English hi-fi timbre that we had been experiencing from the beginning of our journey, but this was now powered up to a level 11. Not in volume, but in a powerful, controlled manner. We decided that we'd try to recreate this and set out to create a full system suitable for such a high-end, high-quality amplification setup. We started by choosing the Chord SPM 1200E stereo power amplifier, which pumped out up to 620 watts of crystal clear sound to the front stereo speakers, to which we added the optional solid support legs for both style and stability. This provided a classy, solid, chunky brushed aluminium powerful amp, which additionally gave out a satisfying blue internal lighting effect, highlighting the internal components. To match and provide amplification for the centre and rear channels, we selected a matching Chord SPM 603 3-channel amp, which provided 200 watts to power the centre channel and 130 watts to the rears. All told, this gave a total system amplification power of well over a kilowatt. The major difference from earlier systems we had created was that previous setups included an integrated receiver, often just referred to as simply as the amp in the system. These provide a full suite of central interconnection, gathering together all the sources, processing of all the generated signals, amplification of these supplies to power the speakers, various knobs, switch, sliders and dials to alter such sources, the volume and tone controls, along with text displays to see what you're listening to, whilst often showing off an array of pretty coloured lights to demonstrate what's going on. The chord amps, which we had selected, had none of this witchcraft. They were pure amplification devices, designed to simply amplify audio signals from another source, but to do it well. We had to get up to the speed on pre-amplification stages in hi-fi. Our choice was to find a preamplifier which would take signals from a processor and then find the processor as well, so we first looked at the chord option. Their preamplifier was an equally chunky brushed aluminium encasement that had a rather ugly volume control and virtually no other features. It didn't quite match the look of the amplifiers and sadly had no display and few coloured lights. It was also horrendously expensive, as were all the high-grade processors we looked at. The matching chord one, for instance, was priced equivalent to over 10 grand today. But there was one device that took our fancy. That was a kind of midpoint choice, encompassing all the Denon-type receivers did, but excluding the inbuilt power amplification. A processor preamp. The distinction here was that the manufacturer, TagMcLaren, yes, the well-known Formula One TagMcLaren brand, I understand some from the highly skilled technical race engineering team were hi-fi enthusiasts, so decided to create a division to design, produce and manufacture a fairly exclusive range of high-end quality components using their engineering nous and electronic build skills. Although I always wondered how their aerodynamicist skills were of much use here. So we opted for using a TagMcLaren Audio Avant-Garde range THX Surround EX Plus Theatre AV32R processor preamp, including DTS processing. The THX bit referring to a high-end digital processing standard and founded by George Lucas of Star Wars fame in 1983, which was used in the newer cinemas and incorporated in some well-produced DVD films. Kind of like an enhanced Dolby system, of which DTS was also a new standard. Another reason to go for this processor was that the TagMcLaren Audio Avant-Garde range DVD32R THX transport that we discovered that looked superb as a centerpiece, even if it was ridiculously expensive compared to the standard mass-produced DVD players at the time. It was our first and became the only DVD player that we ever owned. The top-loading design with a weighty puck disc support was so stable, noticeably reducing all the jittering and fluctuations many systems normally picked up, and operated in a suitably engaging way when the automated lid slid aside to reveal the disc playing surface. Mind you, over time the lid's sliding mechanism sometimes became reluctant to slide without a gentle flick of an assisting finger. We should have had the race team in to service it. They surely would have had it sorted out in about 5 seconds based on their wheel changing speeds. In looking at this combination, we were reminded of our thoughts when we were picking our Laserdisc player, when we decided to bypass the original basic internal digital to audio processing and use an external DAC to improve audio performance. Although hyper expensive, the TagMcLaren DVD, which used the highest quality build materials and processes to create a stable spinning disc platform, which reduced electronic noise alongside expensively sourced and screened internal cabling and electronics, only outputted the standard DVD output feed of 48 kHz video and 96 kHz of DVD audio. Impressive as it was, it could be improved. It would have been pointless repurposing our DAC in the box, as this couldn't outperform the DVD itself, but there was an option where we could add something to the processor. We upgraded the TagMcLaren processor to incorporate optional twin 192 kHz DACs, so processing was done on board, rather than within the DVD. That way, it would also audibly improve everything else connected to it. As a result, other than our DVDs, we also used to play our music CDs on the DVD transport as well, a task which most DVDs of the time didn't traditionally handle well. This was due to the laser alignment within the differing grade red laser CD and blue laser DVD standards. Feeding CD music through this incredibly stable DVD player and then through a high-end processor fitted with 192 kHz DACs meant that we had a crystal clear, precise 44.1 kHz CD feed. It certainly noticeably outperformed the CD player on the Laserdisc that we had kept in our system to continue enjoying the Laserdisc film collection we had still retained, although by now the DVD format naturally became our film source of choice. We didn't continue gathering Laserdiscs, despite their prices dropping considerably. Interestingly, however, the TagMcLaren DVD player refused point blank to read and play homemade CD burns, as if it knew that these were just handmade creations on reusable discs which may have had a dubious history. In fact, only relatively recently I understood there is a real technical difference in the feeds of manufactured and home-cut reusable CDs, discovered when I was researching over-the-air streaming specifications. We also substantially uprated our front speakers, but discovered the Bowers & Wilkins range that we had heard was such a premium price that it stretched even our relatively ample resources. So we looked again at the KEF reference range, now in Series 2. We decided to change our main front stereo pair from our existing KEF reference 2s to a pair of massive KEF reference 4.2 speakers, each with twin vertically opposed bass drivers and 3 mid-range cones, with one incorporated in the central Uni-Q tweeter. They stood over 1.2 metres high and weighed in at nearly 50 kilograms each. This meant we could repurpose our existing KEF reference 2 speakers as very substantial rear channel speakers. However, we also retained our existing KEF reference centre speaker, which frankly did a poor job trying to match up to our powerful new front stereo setup. When this amplification and speakers were set up, the system output could play so loud that you couldn't actually be in the same room when they were all at full pelt, such as when the system was running the sound check setup, which used digitally created white noise generation. This sound setup was a feature of the processor, but we had to source a microphone with a lead to monitor the sound. But what was more important than full blast performance was that at lower levels, reproduction was seemingly effortless, picking up the finest details with a central clarity and deep basses. Liken this to an ability of a sports car easily passing other traffic at legal speed due to its inherent inbuilt high top-end capabilities. Of course, full bass was also substantially improved by the addition to our system of a quality rail Q400 sub-bass system, which output 400 watts, peaking at 800 watts, down to 14 Hz, which was needed for the Dolby 5.1 feed low frequencies channel, because we rather enjoyed hearing as well as feeling the low-pitched rumble when watching films featuring submarines being attacked by depth charges. Not to mention the unexpectedly noticeably considerable thump when Wimbledon tennis players hit the ball around. Note that I refer to a sub-bass system rather than the more commonly phrased subwoofer. This was deliberate as there is a difference. A subwoofer is a simple bassy box which traditionally provides a dedicated 0.1 feed and a multi-channel setup, but could be used to crudely enhance low-end music bass. The sub-bass system is designed to do these functions, but has additional musicality control crossover functionality to correctly balance the output across various frequencies to match the sound source, so it can really enhance music reproduction via direct attachment to the normal speaker connections, meaning it can be seamlessly used in twin stereo music mode, enhancing but not overwhelming the listening experience. In addition to responding to the standard rumbling 0.1 feed when in surround mode. Submarines. We simplified our input sources by ditching the record and cassette decks, as their hardware was becoming outdated, and also left out the tuner because we had never used it in years. The beautifully engineered J.A. Michel turntable was missed, but the need for a top centerpiece was eliminated due to the design of the top load and tag DVD. Losing the turntable was the hardest because it wasn't just the looks, but the overall theatre of selecting and removing a record contained with its twin sleeves, giving it a gentle dust off, opening the hinged crystal clear lid, then carefully aligning it on the platter to observe it slowly lap around under the delicate touch of a finely banished tone arm, jiggling intently as it went. However, we did not lament the loss of the unavoidably scratchy LPs it had to use, nor did we miss the clunky workmanlike manipulation of cassette tapes, beautiful though the equipment itself was. We're also moving away from listening to compilations, favouring full artist albums as CD discs became relatively cheaper to collect. We kept our Sony widescreen TV along with our early 1990s Panasonic NV HS1000B video cassette player in the system, as these were still current technology, and we needed a way to occasionally time shift recording of TV content, a feature not then available on DVDs. The TV was coupled to an updated digital terrestrial receiver, a Nokia Media Master 221T Digibox, so acted as a big monitor. All these were fed in the TagMcLaren processor for remote switching. All this lovely new shiny had to sit somewhere in our lounge, so we created a space to the right of our fireplace and stacked it all on an audiophile Starbase HiFi stand, which is an attractive, substantial alloy triangular framework with rubber cushion painted square platters for the equipment support. We placed it between the right front speaker and the sub-bass unit as seen in this photograph. You can also see some of the nest of wiring required to connect all the bits together. And it's worth discussing our considerations during our design process, and perhaps introduce here the wiring diagram I prepared to assist in the connectivity. This was the first time I had drawn out a wiring diagram, which I chose to compile due to the sheer complexity of the various interconnects. I did this prior to buying all the equipment and setting it all up, using where possible technical data from the suppliers. At times the dealers wondered why I was so insistent on seeing the technical manuals supplied with their equipment, but these were the most reliable source of actual connectivity needed. The sales brochures usually not including photos or drawings of the back of the components. I started at the heart of the system by graphically portraying the various connections on the back of the TagMcLaren AV32R processor. In hindsight, you can see here in the photo what it was actually like, with all those shiny connectors being gold, not gold coloured but actual gold plated. The material uses it resists age degradation and so maintaining a good electrical connection. From left to right as viewed from the rear, the first connector, next to the power cord, was a standard RJ45 LAN cable connecting the two tag devices, for which we used the cable supplied by TagMcLaren. Next up, the S-video or composite analog choices for the visual sources, the DVD, VCR and Laserdisc. We chose to use the technically superior S-video connectors utilising Cord Company sVHS interconnects to receive the video signals from the sources and send them to the TV. Note that simple to daisy chain SCART connections were not an option on this grade of processor. Moving on to the digital connections, and the audio of the Laserdisc was connected with a Cord Company OptiCord between the Toslink connectors. This used a fine clear plastic delicate optical cable to efficiently digitally carry all the bits of data which made up the sound via rapid flashes of light. This was the only digital sound option on the Laserdisc. The alternative digital connectors on the processor were the coax, and these were used for the digital audio feed from the DVD and the TV receiver, for which we used Cord Company ProDAC Silver Plus interconnects. Note that another digital coax connector was fed between the DVD and processor, and for this one we used a Cord Company Anthem lead, which was an expensive high-grade twisted pair interconnect, selected because of upgraded DAC circuits in the processor. This was by far the most expensive interconnect we used, at a cost of £300 for a half-metre cable, equivalent to £550 today. Adjacent to the coax connectors were the analogue outputs to the amplifiers and sub-bass, where we used Cord Company Chorus interconnects for the speakers and Silver Siren for the sub-bass. And finally, for the processor, we connected our VCR inputs with Chord Company analog leads. Now we move on to the amplification stage, and again we chose to use Chord Company cabling. This consistency with manufacturer supply assists in putting together a system, as alternate cabling companies add varying sound qualities. We like the Chord Company's mellow reproduction, as opposed to often more precise but gratingly sharper alternatives. And all this takes a while to assess, asking dealers to demonstrate the numerous options we could have chosen. So for our speakers we chose the weighty Odyssey 4 for our front and centre speakers, and the more manageable Odyssey 2 range for the rears. We did ensure that we matched the length of the cables from the amps to all of the speakers evenly, meaning due to our room layout, all the cables had to be the length of the distance to the left rear speaker, which passed the fireplace, the TV setup, went via the bay window recess and eventually to the speaker beyond our sofa. This was done to ensure there was no delay in sound from different speakers, which although probably minimal, showed the extent to which we were trying to create a perfect soundstage. The downside being the reams of excess curled up cabling circled up behind our TV and sub-bass unit. Plus, before we move on from speaker output, we had to add in a rail-supplied Nutric speak-on connector from our main amplifier speaker connections to the sub-bass unit. So we had both high-level and low-level interconnects for respectively our music and Dolby 0.1 effects. But we still had some more interconnections to make. The digital TV receiver had to be connected to the TV and VCR to be able to see the picture, but had no S-video or component video option, so we had to use the RGB SCART option. We found that a company called QED produced a high-quality bright blue encased lead they named Squart. Expensive for a SCART lead at a total of around £100, £180 today, but that included one that could traverse the width of our lounge, plus was stylish and well appointed with shiny gold-plated ends. Now the RF aerial leads, which connected from the wall socket in the lounge behind our TV into our TV receiver placed on a shelf below it. Then onto the VHS in the stack on the right of our fireplace. Then back across the fireplace to a booster box, which would split the signal first to the TV and also around past the bay window up into the corner of the room towards our upstairs TV. The version of which you see here in the bedroom was after we upgraded our DTV unit to a pair of Sony items, of which more in the next video in this series. Subscribe to hear when this is released. And finally the power supply was considered. Like most houses, particularly ones on housing estates like ours, the electric power supply was naturally shared with our neighbours. This means that any electrical interference from all adjacent properties could technically affect any of the others, and everyone had a variety of things they plugged in, from cheap microwaves and vacuum cleaners to poorly insulated power tools. This probably won't stop things working unless overloads are experienced, but when you're using sophisticated electronics and expensive high-end stereo equipment, it pays to be cautious about the incoming supply. The answer, if you can afford it, is to use electrical suppression. This can be found in high-quality electrical supply adapters and extensions, offering a smoothing of the sometimes erratic mains power fluctuations, spike protection, and electrical interference reduction. Or at least that's what the industry tells you when they're already planning on spending thousands on the system. It pays to add just a bit more on for this added mental reassurance. The mains option we chose was just one simple 6-way connector block from Isotech for our stacked components. No idea if it worked, but it looks substantial and chunky enough to justify its price. We never had any power issues. So, how did it all sound? Well, it was a noticeable ramp up from our previously already decent Denon-based system in virtually all aspects. The 192 kHz DACs rendered a precise sound from even lower quality CDs and positively cranked up the impact of film watching on the Laserdisc. Plus, when we played this newfangled DVD format, we could definitely appreciate the better rendition of these discs over previous sVHS and Laserdisc playback, orally and visually. As a result, we started to seek out DVD music productions and really enjoyed playing Fleetwood Mac and Chris Rea in widescreen DVD full surround sound, using our amps with their seemingly limitless power while being encased by an all-around waist-high floor-standing speakers with multiple drivers supported by a floor-rumbling bass you felt as much as heard. Then when it came to pure stereo music, we could crank up our favourite soft rock albums and be hit with a sound so addictive you'd forget all else what was going on at the time in your lives. And it wasn't just the rock music. I enjoy a good ballad, or maybe sometime with an easily listening session. This setup would deliver at any sound level, from picking delicate details out of the backgrounds of softly played tracks to feeding you with a visceral sound wall of emotion. We spent more and more hours just listening to music. It was fortunate that we had a detached house, so we had no restrictions imposed on our listening, and Linda would often spend a couple of hours cleaning the house on a Friday afternoon, with Meatloaf cranked up to 11 being heard well above the frenetic hoovering in every room, including those upstairs. There were some issues, but mainly with our environment. The system could have comfortably suited a large hall, but we lived in a fairly modest home with our set up in a lounge that was more wide than deep. Not a corridor, but far from an ideal square. We only sat about 2 metres from our TV, even with the settee hard up against the wall. The system stereo width was adequate, around 3 metres, but the TV was offset to the far left due to our centrepiece fireplace. As a result, the sound and vision from the seating areas was offset to the left, and the rear surround effects too close to the left ear, feeling imbalanced. A problem that couldn't be corrected by balance controls. However, discussions with experts only resulted in the usual dumb comments of, why not deconstruct your house walls, or even move home? The other issue with the layout was the fireplace. We had already made a small hole at low level for a power cord to the electric fire, but Linda was against enlarging this enough to accommodate an arm's width of bundled cables serving the HiFi, due to access issues in the event of failure. So we temporarily laid the cables across the mantelpiece, clumped together with plastic cable ties, with the necessary generous radii needed, but never got around to relocating them. We discussed laying them around the fireplace base under our fitted carpet, but again Linda was against creating a mini parapet bulge. The only saving grace of the exposed wiring was that it technically was one of the best solutions. It was one of the worst aesthetically. Another problem was the now increasing issue with poor source content. As discussed in my earlier video, the more accomplished the system, the more chance a lowly produced CD would be highlighted in a bad way. We again had to content ourselves with the thought that we may have had less choice, but what remained was even better to experience. I would also confirm that the imbalance of the centre speaker was noticeable, and I never thought it deserved the reference moniker that it proudly wore. It may have been one of the best centre speakers Kef made, but was still 2 leagues lower than the floor stands we had. In particular, films rely on a good centre point to draw in a viewer to a scene, and often 5.1 soundtracks only use the stereo fronts as music enhancement. Clearly our setup was biased towards a great 4.1 sound system and was less competent being the 5.1 system we had invested in. There was no adjustment to correct this in the processor. Finally, we noticed that when you have around 1.8 kilowatt of electrical generating equipment in your room, plus a big television, it really pumps out some heat, which was quite noticeable on already warm sunny summer days. Anyway, let's lay out the approximate prices of what we actually ended up with, and then compare them to an equivalent value in 2024, the latest year I have accurate figures for. These sums are the best I can access given the records I kept, my recollections and research which I carried out, all made slightly easier because everything we bought was new from dealers, so helped with my valuations. First up, the Sony widescreen TV, costing us around £500 in the early 1990s, which we reused from our previous system. In today's world, this would now be around £1,210. Adding the digital terrestrial receiver, a Nokia MediaMaster 221T Digibox costing £80, which we included in 2002, £150 in today's money. Our pre-amplifier processor, a TagMcLaren AV32R, which we upgraded with 192 kHz DACs, cost us, all in, £2,500 in 2001. A hefty £4,590 equivalent in 2024, but certainly not the most expensive component. This was our new main 2-channel 620 watt power amplifier from Chord Electronics, powering the front speakers. The stunning SPM 1200E costing more than that in 2001, £5,000, or $9,180 today. The system matching 3-channel power amplifier serving the centre and rear channels, the Chord Electronics SPM 603, was comparatively cheaper at £2,000 in 2001, $3,600 in today's value. The most surprisingly high-priced item was the stylish TagMcLaren DVD 32R DVD player, costing an incredible £4,500 in 2001, equivalent to a massive £8,270 in today's market, for an albeit special DVD player, now a collector's item. The Pioneer CLD 1950 Laserdisc player cost us £600 in the early 1990s, which we reused, calculating for £1,450 in 2024. Also reused was our video cassette player, the Panasonic NV HS1000B, costing around £500 in the early 1990s, £1,210 today. And to complete the page, our audiophile Starbase HiFi stand at £600 in 2001 or £1,100 now. All this adds up to a subtotal of 16,280 or a modern equivalent of over 30,830. And we're only just halfway through. So let's move on to our second page. Carry forward the first page subtotals. Add the speakers, the main front ones. The new in 2001 KEF reference Model 42s costing £3,000, a full 5,510 equivalent in 2024. The centre speaker, again a KEF reference, Model 100 centre, is £700, which we originally acquired in the early 1990s and reused here, £1,700 in today's value. Also reused from the same time, our rear speakers were our KEF reference Model 2s, costing £1,200 or £2,900 nowadays. A new sub-bass system from Brel was added, the Q400E, costing £1,000 in 2001, £1,840 now. Mustn't forget our tried and trusted 1984 vintage Pioneer SE450 headphones, which cost us about £30, £100 in today's value. Onto the cables, which I shall group together to avoid complexity. First up, the Chord Company speaker cables, Odyssey 4 pairs for our front 3 speakers and Odyssey 2 to our rear speakers, all matched in length, which totaled about £1,000 in 2001 or £2,020 in 2024. Various other interconnects, analog, optical and digital, as described before, totaled around £1,400 in 2001 or £2,570 in today's value. Then finally the power unit from Isotech, costing £1,000 in 2001, £1,840 now. All making an approximate full system value in 2001 of £25,710, which is equivalent to a mighty system worth around £49,310 today. For comparison, note that our average take-home pay annually around 2000 to 2005 for both of us was around £37,000, a reasonable equivalent in the order of £67,110 today, making our system worth around 70% of our annual income. In fairness, we didn't update this system every year, and to perfect our system mix we were reusing some older non-outdated components which we had purchased in earlier years. But taking this into account would still make a new 2001 spend of about £22,680 or £41,950 today. So still a good lump of our monies, indicating our preparedness to continue supporting our expensive hobby. I might note that this excludes other AV equipment we had at the time, such as our previously mentioned bedroom TV setup and kitchen Denon CD radio setup, as seen here. All in all, we had a contemporarily modern 5.1 AV system with great quality components, which could comfortably provide our TV, film and music watching and listening. It wasn't perfect, just as our room wasn't, but it made us very happy to interact with it. Eventually new technology, as it does, came along to make some aspects feel like they could do with some attention. The mismatch of a big powerful sound to a comparatively smaller screen was the most obvious, so when large flat screens appeared at eye-watering prices, we watched intently to act as soon as they dropped towards our budget. You'll need to subscribe to the channel to find out what we changed up next, and you may be surprised what we did. And whilst you're in subscribing mode, why not add a like to justify why you have watched this far? Then add a comment, which not only allows you to share similar experiences with everyone, but pumps the video up to the suggestions list on YouTube, so more can experience this journey of ours. Thanks for watching through to the end of this video. It really does mean a lot to me, as would you find in another of my videos to enjoy just as much. Until next time, see you around. This has been a film by Vince, copyright 2025.